The field of psychology has a rich and varied history, marked by both captivating discoveries and cruel atrocities in the name of science. While countless psychological experiments have been carried out globally, few are as disturbing as the Milgram experiment. Unlike other horrifying experiments, the Milgram experiment is particularly terrifying, not due to its nature or method of execution, but rather the insights it uncovers. In this experiment, the wrongdoers are not the administrators, but rather all of us. Keep watching the video to learn the shocking truth about what the experiment reveals about our nature. The Milgram experiment took place in 1961 under the direction of Stanley Milgram, a psychologist from Yale University. The study involved 40 male participants, aged between 20 and 50, representing diverse occupations and educational backgrounds. They were recruited, used in advertising pamphlets, and were compensated $4 per hour for their participation, the equivalent of around $40 nowadays. The straightforward instructions given to the participants were to follow the commands of authority figures guiding them in certain actions. But little known to the participants, there was crucial information they were not aware of. See, the experiment took place 3 months after the start of the trial of German Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. Milgram was fascinated by the defense of the Nazi official, who argued he was merely following orders. Being intrigued, Milgram sought to test whether an ordinary person could commit murder under similar circumstances. Initially, Milgram conducted a survey, finding a common belief that most individuals would not willingly kill someone merely because of orders. However, he desired more definitive data. In July 1961, Milgram initiated the now famous Milgram Experiment. The psychological study involved a participant who believed they were engaged in a memorization test. Seated on one side of a wall, they were instructed to administer electric shocks to another person on the opposite side whenever that person answered a question incorrectly. The second person was aware of the real nature of the test. The electric shocks were not real, and memorization was not the experiment's purpose. In the adjacent room, the second person played tapes with recorded screams and shouts, activated when the test subject administered the supposed electric shock. A third participant, dressed in a lab coat, positioned themselves behind the test subject and simulated conducting the examination with the individual on the opposite side of the wall. For every incorrect response, the person in the lab coat directed the test subject to escalate the voltage of the administered shock. The last 3 switches were clearly labeled with high-voltage warning signs. As the experiment progressed, the tapes played increasingly distressing and agonizing audio recordings of screams. The individual posing as a test taker would also pound on the wall, plead to be released, and deliver scripted lines about having a heart condition. However, after the 7th shock, they would fall completely silent, suggesting unconsciousness, or perhaps even death. Nevertheless, the individual in the lab coat urged the participant to persist in administering increasingly intense shocks to the test taker, ultimately reaching the final switch marked 450 volts and deemed potentially lethal. The outcomes of the experiments were shocking. 26 out of the 40 subjects proceeded to administer the lethal 450-volt shock, and all of them reached the 300-volt level, marked as exceedingly agonizing. To exacerbate the situation, according to Milgram's documentation and recollections, those participants who declined to deliver the final shock did not demand an end to the experiment or exit the room to verify the well-being of the victim without seeking permission to do so. Milgram summarized the experiment in his 1974 article, The Perils of Obedience, writing, "The legal and philosophic aspects of obedience are of enormous importance, but they say very little about how most people behave in concrete situations. I set up a simple experiment at Yale University to test how much pain an ordinary citizen would inflict on another person simply because he was ordered to by an experimental scientist. Stark authority was pitted against the subject's strongest moral imperatives against hurting others, and, with the subjects, ears ringing with the screams of the victims, authority won more often than not. Subsequently, Milgram and fellow psychologists conducted variations of the experiment globally, yielding comparable outcomes. Thomas Blas, from the University of Maryland, conducted a meta-analysis on replication results within and outside the United States. His findings indicated a lack of cultural variation, and in both US and non-US replications of the experiment, the percentage of participants who delivered the final lethal shock was 63%. The Milgram experiment will be remembered for a long time. It unraveled the disconcerting depths of human behavior, exposing a nightmarish underbelly where ordinary individuals willingly plunge into darkness under the spell of authority. The study's sinister revelation lies the unsettling reality that a substantial number of people, while driven by obedience, are ready to essentially execute another human being. This chilling revelation transcends the confines of the laboratory, echoing the haunting chapters of history where the defense of Eichmann's actions eerily parallels the experiment's findings. The experiment's implications delve into the abyss of our ethical boundaries, forcing us to confront the unsettling prospect that under the right circumstances we might all become unwitting agents of terror.
Thanks for tuning into our video. If you're eager to dive deeper into the realms of psychology through narrated content covering topics from personality distinctions to mental disorders and fascinating historical cases, don't forget to subscribe. Stay connected for more insightful content. Appreciate your support and catch you in the next video. Goodbye.